There's a quiet war unfolding, one so subtle most people walk right past it. It's not fought on open fields or broadcast on the evening news. It's the war of a woman standing alone, unsupported, unseen. No cheering crowds, no safety net, no one to call when the world caves in. She rises each morning not because she's rested, but because life leaves her no room to pause. And that is strength. That is discipline forged in the fires of necessity. That is resilience no book can teach. It's carved through experience, through endurance, through survival. People rarely understand the weight of silence, the kind that follows her like a shadow. The silence she carries even when she's breaking inside, yet still shows up, still gives, still holds others together. And when no one comes to save her, she learns the most sacred lesson of all: become the hero of your own story. This is not a glossy tale of empowerment. It's harsh, it's unfiltered. It's the alchemy of pain into purpose, fear into direction, chaos into order. Because the truth is simple: support is a luxury, but responsibility is not. And when a woman embraces responsibility fully, it becomes her path to meaning. When she has no support, she faces two choices: collapse or rebuild herself from the ground up. And the ones who rise in silence, they are the ones who threaten mediocrity. They don't broadcast their struggle. They don't beg for validation. They build themselves quietly until ignoring them becomes impossible. Most people think strength is loud, but real strength isn't noise, it's composure. It's staying steady when every part of you wants to surrender. It's whispering, "I will try again tomorrow," even when today was unbearable. A woman who has tasted abandonment, betrayal, poverty, loneliness, and still chooses integrity is a pillar of civilization. She waits for no permission. She blames no one. She stares reality in the face and declares, "I will not break," not because it's easy, but because bitterness and defeat cost far more than effort. What the world never sees behind her quiet presence is a lifetime of self-regulation, of doing what must be done, of choosing responsibility over escape, of showing up even when her body aches and her heart is fractured. And here lies the real power. It's not just survival. It's becoming someone so internally grounded that no storm can shake her foundation. That is the silent victory. That is the transformation. And if you're hearing this on Unbreakable in DST, and you've been walking alone, carrying burdens no one acknowledges, let this be your reminder: you are not invisible. You are not weak for feeling broken. You are extraordinary for refusing to let that brokenness define you. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs people like you. People who face their inner dragons, not to defeat them once, but to grow stronger each time they return. Stand tall, shoulders back, face the world with clarity. You were never meant to stay small. You were born to rise. There is something profoundly tragic, yet undeniably heroic, about a woman who walks through life without a safety net. No father's shield, no mother's embrace, no partner's support, no system to catch her fall. She moves with a quiet urgency that no one truly sees. But that is the essence of the silent battle. When there are no witnesses to your suffering, it either crushes you or turns you unbreakable. Imagine waking up every day in a world where no one tells you your efforts matter. No applause, no recognition, only expectation. The world assumes she will carry everything. And when she does, they say nothing. But when she falters once, they call her fragile. This is the madness of being unsupported yet responsible. She is not allowed the luxury of weakness. She has to remain reliable even while she's unraveling. And that kind of suffering doesn't show up on reports or statistics. It corrodes the spirit slowly, drop by drop. And you might wonder, how does she endure this? How does someone keep moving when no one claps, no one checks in, no one even sees the effort? The answer is both brutal and beautiful. She continues because the alternative is far worse. She knows on a primal level that giving up isn't rest. It's collapse. It's decay. It's the quiet death of self-respect. And for someone like her, that is the one thing she refuses to lose. Her dignity becomes her armor, even when it weighs her down, even when it rubs her raw. There is an ancient, mythic strength in a woman who stands when everything inside her whispers to lie down. Think about that. What it requires to walk into work, to smile, to answer emails, to raise children, to pay bills, to cook dinner, and to do it all knowing there is no backup, no escape route, no rescue if she breaks. She moves across a tightrope with no one holding the net. And unless you've lived it, the mental weight of that is impossible to comprehend. And society plays its cruel game. It praises independence until that independence becomes inconvenient, until it exposes their absence. Then suddenly her strength is called coldness. Her discipline becomes bitterness. She is told she is too intense, too serious, too much. But what is the alternative? Should she crumble so others can feel comfortable? Should she shrink so she becomes manageable? And here lies the sharpest irony. Many women living this life don't even know how extraordinary they are because no one tells them. No one says, what you're doing is heroic, because their heroism doesn't look like explosions or awards. It looks like showing up on a Monday morning after a weekend of silent tears. It looks like paying rent with the last 20 in the bank and still giving the better half of their meal to their child. It looks like swallowing anxiety, steadying their breath, and pretending to be fine so others don't worry. None of that earns medals. None of it gets applause. But it should. We live in a time obsessed with performing strength, yet indifferent to living it. Real strength doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't chase recognition. Real strength is the woman sitting alone in her car before a shift, breathing deeply, preparing to give her best even when she has nothing left. That is strength, unglamorous, quiet, but foundational to civilization. And understand this: when a woman builds herself without help, she doesn't just build a life. She builds a philosophy. She learns responsibility. She learns delayed gratification. She learns the weight and worth of character, because character is the only thing she ever had. And that makes her dangerous, not in harm, but in the way that shakes mediocrity to its core. You cannot manipulate her. You cannot silence her with guilt. She has faced storms far greater than your opinion. She has faced herself and survived. What happens to a person forced to be both protector and protected, nurturer and disciplinarian? It creates a kind of psychological wholeness most people never reach because they're never pushed that far. Pain, real pain, when faced honestly, refines the soul. It strips away illusion. It wipes out entitlement. It forces her to become precise with her time, her boundaries, her energy. And that precision, that self-awareness, that's what makes her terrifyingly competent. But competence is lonely. There's a sorrow that comes with being the strong one, because everyone leans on you, and you are conditioned to never lean back. She can stand in a crowded room and still feel like she's holding it up by herself, because in many ways she is. She has become so dependable that people stop checking in. And that is the tragic cost of strength: invisibility. People only see the chaos when it spills over. They never see the chaos she prevented. They don't see the maintenance. They don't see the battles she fought before anyone even realized there was danger. She absorbs disorder. That becomes her duty, her burden. And in those rare moments when she is finally alone, it hits her. No one truly knows how hard it has been, and maybe no one ever will. But she keeps going anyway, because she refuses to abandon herself. She refuses to let her circumstances shape her character. She refuses to let the absence of support justify the presence of self-destruction. That is integrity. And integrity is grace under immense pressure. So the next time you see a woman who looks composed, look again. Look deeper, because she may be standing in the center of a war no one can see. A war she fights daily without backup, without sympathy, without rest. And she is still standing, still giving, still showing up. That is not mere resilience. That is transcendence. That is the silent battle of a woman with no support, and it may be one of the most powerful forces you will ever encounter. Chaos is not some distant abstraction. It is the laundry piling up when you're too tired to care. It's the unexpected call with bad news. It's a missed paycheck, a broken promise, a hollow room at night. It's waking with anxiety gripping your chest and still needing to prepare breakfast. Chaos is life in its rawest form. And when you're alone, when no one is there to help contain it, chaos becomes your closest companion. But meaning, that emerges when you confront that chaos voluntarily. Not always by choice, but always by necessity. You don't overcome chaos by retreating. You face it. And in doing so, you become more than you were. That is the heart of transformation. Most people think life is about happiness, comfort, peace. But life is about bearing, and in rare, honest moments, it is about redeeming the suffering that cannot be avoided. When you have no support, when no one is coming to rescue you, that truth arrives swiftly and without mercy. People ask, how do I find meaning? But that's the wrong question. Meaning is not found, it is built. Built in fire, in struggle, in the repetitive, uncelebrated work of doing what is necessary. Especially when you don't feel like it. Especially when no one sees it. Meaning is cultivated by choosing responsibility over resentment. By waking up and choosing again and again not to fall into the pit. Even when the pit feels familiar, even when surrender feels justified, there is a quiet dignity in doing what must be done without complaint. And there is a deeper power born from taking responsibility for your own existence. Not because she caused the problem, but because she refuses to be destroyed by it. That is what real transformation looks like. Not becoming someone new, but becoming someone true. Someone whole, someone who has faced their suffering honestly and said, "This will not define me, but it will refine me." And that is where competence is born. Competence is never granted, it is earned. It is shaped through trial, error, and relentless repetition. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is a skill forged under pressure. And for a woman with no support, competence becomes survival because she cannot afford ignorance. She has no one to fall back on. So she learns out of necessity. How to manage money, how to regulate emotion, how to plan, how to repair, how to negotiate, how to say no, how to endure. She becomes sharp, precise, functional. And there is something profoundly noble in that process, even if the world never notices. But with competence comes isolation. As she grows stronger, more capable, more reliable, people begin to expect it. They stop checking in. They stop offering help. They assume she's fine. And that is the paradox. The better she is at carrying the weight, the less anyone realizes how heavy it was. So she moves through life with an unspoken burden, being everything to everyone and nothing to herself. And it wears on her. It chisels away at her softness. Yet at the same time, it molds her into something formidable. To carry that responsibility day after day, year after year, transforms a person. It forces her to choose between bitterness and growth, between victimhood and transformation, between chaos and order. And the only sustainable path, the only path worth walking, is the one paved with meaning, not comfort, not escape, meaning. Meaning comes from aiming at something higher than the suffering, from deciding that even if everything collapses around her, she will not collapse with it. From building a life so stable, so structured, that storms cannot take it away. You don't reach that place by accident. You reach it through sacrifice. You give up the fantasy that someone else will repair your life. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking backward. You step forward, one hard, deliberate, meaningful step at a time. You put your life in order not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And in doing so, you create a psychological stability most people only wish for. That is the reward. Not fame, not applause, but self-respect. the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you have become someone reliable in a world that often isn't. And don't mistake this path for emotional numbness. It is not. It requires immense emotional depth. You must feel everything: the grief, the fear, the anger, the exhaustion. But you do not let it immobilize you. You do not drown in it. You acknowledge it, integrate it, and move forward, because you understand emotions are signals, not commanders. If you obey them blindly, you stay stuck. But if you learn from them, you grow. Growth is painful. Transformation is even more so. It demands the death of old habits, old identities, old illusions. And when you have no one to shield you from that pain, it burns. But that fire purifies. It incinerates the unnecessary, the shallow, the performative. What remains is real. What remains is resilient. What remains is you, raw, refined, capable. And when you become that person, something remarkable happens. The world begins to shift, not because it has changed, but because you have. You start to act differently. You begin to inspire not through words, but through presence. People start trusting you not because you ask for it, but because you have demonstrated it. And in a world drowning in noise, someone who is solid, grounded, and capable becomes a lighthouse. But none of this comes without a cost. You lose things on the way: innocence, naivety, sometimes relationships that cannot withstand your growth. Yet what you gain in return is worth the loss. You gain clarity. You gain strength. You gain purpose. You gain the ability to stand up not only for yourself, but for others. You become the kind of person who can bear the weight of responsibility without collapsing. Someone who can step into chaos and create order. Not because it's simple, but because it's necessary. That is what meaning gives. That is what responsibility shapes. That is how competence is formed. Through repeated acts of courage in the presence of fear. Through deliberate movement toward what is difficult but essential. Through the refusal to allow your circumstances to dictate your character. That is the silent revolution. That is how transformation happens. Not in one dramatic moment, but through countless small choices. Decisions stacked upon decisions, sacrifices accumulating into strength. The path is not comfortable, but it is true. And the person who rises from it becomes unshakable. Not because they escaped suffering, but because they absorbed it, integrated it, and forged it into power.